Hello and welcome to China Global Television Network. This is The World Today. I'm Hannah Vivier in Nairobi. Our top story this hour: fighting continues between Israeli and Palestinian forces from Gaza. Israel says that it will evacuate all Israelis living close to the Gaza Strip within 24 hours. The Middle Eastern nation has deployed tens of thousands of soldiers to fight Palestinian militants. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has declared war on Hamas after the Palestinian armed group launched its largest attack on Israel in decades on Saturday. Over 600 people have been killed in the conflict so far, and thousands more have been wounded. In a related incident, an Egyptian has opened fire on an Israeli tourist group in Egypt's northern city of Alexandria, killing at least 2 people. Well, Israel has fired a barrage of artillery into southern Lebanon on Sunday. It comes after Lebanon's military Hezbollah targeted 3 Israeli military positions in the disputed Sheba farms. There was no immediate report of casualties. Israel has held the Sheba farms, a 39 square kilometer piece of land, since 1967, which Lebanon claims as its own. The United Nations peacekeeping mission in southern Lebanon did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Hezbollah, which effectively controls southern Lebanon, says that the attack came in solidarity with the Palestinian resistance and that it was in direct contact with leaders of Palestinian resistance groups. China's foreign ministry has appealed for calm and restraint from all sides. It called for a ceasefire and the protection of civilians. A foreign ministry spokesperson said the fundamental solution to the conflict is the two-state solution and an independent state of Palestine. The spokesperson urged the international community to push for an early resumption of peace talks between Palestine and Israel, and said China will make unremitting efforts to achieve this. The United States has condemned Hamas's attack on Israel. President Joe Biden spoke to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu by phone on Saturday, promising to offer support. The flare-up between Israel and Hamas is also affecting the wider geopolitics in the Middle East. Owen Fairclough reports.
The United States considers itself Israel's most stalwart ally, and within hours of Israel and Hamas engaging in what both sides are calling a war, US President Joe Biden had a very robust statement in support of Israel.
You know, when I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu this morning, I told him the United States stands with the people of Israel in the face of these terrorist assaults. Israel has the right to defend itself and its people, full stop.
Joe Biden reaffirming a decades-old alliance between the US and Israel that's girded by billions of dollars of annual financial aid to Israel to help protect itself against what it considers its chief antagonist in the Middle East, Iran, and indeed its proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas, and to a large extent, the US's antagonists in the region as well. But Joe Biden's relationship with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu belies this close alliance, a decades-old alliance that many consider a friendship between Biden and Netanyahu has been strained in recent months, not least because of US complaints about Israel's continuing to expand settlements in the West Bank, and indeed the judicial reforms initiated by Netanyahu that brought thousands of Israelis out onto the streets in protest. And the relationship between the US and Israel is arguably complicated by the growing diplomatic role of Saudi Arabia. The US, Israel, and Saudi Arabia have been working to normalize relations between the Saudis and the Israelis, in the words of the Biden administration, to integrate Israel into the Middle East. But the normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel was supposedly contingent upon Israel agreeing to recognize Palestinian statehood. That appears to be shifting somewhat, with the Saudis complicating matters by demanding some kind of security guarantees from the United States. To some, that could be akin to a NATO-style mutual defense agreement, but it isn't clear how far either side were willing to go with that, and it's certainly not clear now, in the wake of this conflict between Israel and Hamas, where those negotiations stand. There's also a personal dilemma for Joe Biden as he eyes re-election in 2024 as the US president. He's been trying to restrain Netanyahu with those aforementioned judicial reforms, but he's trying to be careful not to do anything that would give his Republican opponents an argument that he's somehow anti-Israel, with the Jewish vote here in the United States so critical to both Republicans and Democrats. So Biden has to consider how to proceed in the wake of this latest conflict as he thinks about re-election in 2024. Owen Fairclough, Cgtn, Washington.
Our correspondents Mohammed Al-Qasim and Noor Harasin have the latest reports in Tel Aviv and Gaza.
Several mortar shells landed in the occupied Shabaa farms, and Israeli military said that it had to retaliate, targeting the source of these shells. This could explode into a bigger military confrontation, but it stands as is at this point as a firing of these mortar shells and Israeli forces retaliating. In the south, there are still 8 active points in the southern part of Israel that the Israeli military is still dealing with. That's according to the Israeli army. Israeli Prime Minister held meetings late into the night on Saturday and early morning with his security cabinet. After he came out of the emergency security meeting, he held a televised speech, or actually gave a televised speech, where he said that this military operation will be long and it will be hard and it will be costly, but he called on the Israelis to be united. That unity didn't sit well with the opposition leader Yair Lapid, who said that the prime minister should form a national unity government that does not include some of his extremist ministers. And Lapid said that he will join this national unity government if it's formed, as well as former Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz.
Well, it was a very hard, intense night on the people of Gaza this night, with the non-stop voices of explosions and Israeli attacks and airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. The Israeli military said this morning that they targeted 426 targets in Gaza during the night, including 10 buildings. And now we're talking about the Israeli warplanes targeting residential buildings, which is a big loss for the Palestinian families. They targeted Palestine Tower, which is a 14-story tower. They also targeted Watan Tower, located in central Gaza City in such densely populated area in a Rimal Street, which is also a 13-floor tower. Al-Akluk Tower also in Al-Nasr Street, which is also a densely populated area. So we're talking about several Israeli attacks in central Gaza in such a densely populated area, and we're talking about more than 2 million people living in an area of just 360 square kilometers.
Some European countries, including the UK, France and Germany, have voiced condemnation over Hamas's attacks on Israel. Britain's Foreign Minister James Cleverly says its country will support Israel's right to defend itself. French President Emmanuel Macron says France stands in solidarity with Israel. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock is calling Saturday's violence a watershed and an unprecedented act of escalation by Hamas. She's also warned of the danger of a wider ensuing regional conflict. Well, the Afghan government says that over 2,000 people have been killed and more than 9,000 injured after a magnitude 6.3 earthquake struck the northwest of the city of Herat and nearby provinces on Saturday. Our correspondent Marilai Abbasin has more from Kabul.
Well, the situation on the ground is far worse than it's been reported so far. Search and rescue operation continues since yesterday with limited resources that the Taliban-led government has. The Afghan Red Crescent Society, personnel from the Ministries of Disaster Management, Interior Affairs and Defense have been deployed to the areas. I also spoke with Herat Central Hospital staff, and they told that the health facilities are out of medicines and healthcare resources and need immediate assistance from the international organizations. The reason for such a huge loss is poorly made suburban buildings and shelters that lack adequate standards to stand even a magnitude of 5 to 6. About 6 villages reportedly have been totally destroyed, and hundreds of civilians still are buried under the debris. The local authorities and the area affected provinces are feared the death toll may rise as the rescue operation still continue. An unknown number of people are still buried under the debris, especially in two areas of Zindajan and Badghis province. Also, Farah is unclear. Thousands of residents in Herat, Badghis and Farah provinces have been evacuated the areas and have been relocated in central Herat or other neighboring provinces. Also, rescue supporters from Kabul and other provinces have reached the area. There are still struggles by the locals and other Afghan people who have facilities or resources to help the people, and that's a call from the affected people and the authorities in the area to bring the immediate relief aid to the areas, while this strategy will still continue for a couple of days and the search and rescue operation is on the way.
U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer arrived in Shanghai on Saturday afternoon, leading a bipartisan delegation of senators visiting China. Chen Jining, the secretary of the Shanghai Municipal Committee of the Communist Party of China, met with them. Chen introduced Shanghai's economic and social development and spoke about the benefits of a sound and stable China-U.S. relationship. Chen Tong has the details of the visit.
U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, leading a bipartisan U.S. Senate delegation, has arrived in Shanghai, the first stop of their China visit. Earlier, China's foreign ministry said China welcomes Schumer's visit and hope the visit will contribute to a more objective understanding of China in the U.S. Congress, boosting the communications between the legislatures and also add some positive factors to the China-U.S. relations. Well, in fact, the last visit of a U.S. delegation led by a Senate Majority Leader was actually in 2011, and Schumer was in the delegation team. And the last U.S. congressional delegation to visit China was 4 years ago.
And that's it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from the continent in Africa Live. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you then.
Holding guns towards protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time? Not at all.
Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.